Happy Tuesday and welcome to another episode of Hornets Daily, your one-stop shop for all things Charlotte Hornets. As always, we're presented by the good people over at FanArc, and I'm your host Vance Ballard, but you already know you can call me VB. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, watching along with us out there. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, leave a like and a comment down in the comment section. It's always fun watching you guys chat, hearing some of your thoughts on what's going on the show as we continue to build and grow this Hornets Daily family here on the program. Had a little bit of audio issues yesterday. That has been taken care of. Should not be a problem today. We should be able to move cleanly through the show. And on the docket for today, we've got a few things. It is, again, still the late part of August, a very slow time in the NBA. But there are some things buzzing about in the Queen City. We know all about the moves the Hornets have made this offseason, the guys they have brought in, the additions that have been made this summer. But of those guys, which Hornets are the most likely to be the long-term guys? Who's going to be in Charlotte for the long haul? Who's going to stay around the most? We'll discuss that on the program today. It's been a while since we've brought him up, but you guys know this is a KJ Simpson podcast, maybe the only one on the internet. But this here is a KJ Simpson show. We'll talk a little about his potential impact in Charlotte today as well. We also kind of have an understanding for what the starting five is going to look like on opening night. But the big question is, which one of those spots is the most up for grabs? What's the most uncertain starting position that the Hornets have? We'll discuss that today as well. And can LaMelo change the narrative surrounding him? He is 1 year long enough to change the thought process, the ideas about LaMelo, about his game, about who he is. Can 1 year change that, or is it going to take a bit longer? Is this just the foundation for a new LaMelo that we see here? We'll discuss that on the program as well. You know, I don't beat around the bush here on Hornets Daily. We like to dive head first into the program. That's exactly what we're going to do today as well. I mentioned that we know about all of the moves the Hornets have made this offseason, the additions of guys like Collin Sexton, Spencer Dinwiddie, Pat Connaughton, the draft where we got Con Knipple, Liam McNeely, Sion James, Ryan Kalkbrenner, all of the additions that have been added, even Mason Plumlee in there as well. All of the additions that the Hornets have made, we know about those. We know it's been a busy and very productive offseason. But of those guys, of the current players on the roster, who are here for the long term? Who are the Hornets that are going to stay around and be a big part of the future of this organization? Sports Illustrated has offered up their idea on 4 guys they think could be in Charlotte for the long haul. The names that they mentioned in their article: LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller, and Trey Mann. Now, 3 of those are pretty obvious. Don't need a lot of breaking down there. We know that LaMelo and Brandon Miller, the 2 stars on the team already, the 2 foundation pieces that this franchise is trying to build around in the first place. We know all about those guys. Con Knipple, obviously still a lot of uncertainty there. Haven't seen him play yet, but he is the number 4 overall draft pick, so he has to be included in that list of guys who are part of the plan for the long term here in Charlotte. So Con makes perfect sense as well. The most interesting one of these names, obviously, is Trey Mann. That's the one that jumps out the most to me. Now, we know, or at least we kind of think we know, what Trey Mann is capable of in his role. We know that last year, before his injury, he was putting up award-winning type numbers. He was looking as if he could sneak his way into the 6th man of the year conversation prior to that injury. So we do know a little bit about what Trey Mann brings to the table. We understand a little bit about what he has to offer this organization and this franchise, coming in, filling the role that we know he needs to fill, that 6th man type of role. Now, the Hornets have added a couple guys who could potentially as well be a 6th man type of player, so it might not be directly the number 6 spot that Trey Mann is in anymore, with guys like Collin Sexton or Con Knipple. One of those 2 guys is probably going to have to come off the bench, so it could push Trey's minutes down just a little bit. But again, we know his capabilities. We know what he does bring coming off the bench. And if he can pick up where he left off when as he'll be healthy this year coming into the season, he just signed a 3-year extension, so he's comfortable in his contract. He's got nothing to worry about there. He's going to be healthy in terms of health wise. He'll be back and ready to go. So if Trey Mann can pick up where he left off, and Charlotte can have a true sixth man that can make an impact, or even a seventh, eighth, whatever actual number he may be on the bench. If the Hornets can have another guy who can continue to come and be productive in that guard role, in that position, then that only solidifies things and makes them a little more comfortable going forward, knowing with the roster they have. So, and it's again not just about this year; it's about next year and moving on as well. We know Colin Sexton only on a 1-year deal, so if Trey Mann can fill that role, then the Hornets don't necessarily have to go and spend the big money that Colin Sexton is probably going to require next year, definitely more than what they have Trey Mann under contract for going forward. So that could be beneficial as well. Obviously, the likes of LaMelo and Brandon Miller, those guys here to stay because they are the stars. They have established themselves in the NBA. They're what the Hornets plan to build around and continue to move forward with in the future. Con Knipple, if he works out the way we all think he is, his ceiling is already, or his floor is already very high, but we know his ceiling is even higher, so he could stay around. Trey Mann going to be one of the most interesting ones of these guys to watch and continue to see how he develops and if he stays around in Charlotte for the all of the moves that have been made towards building this lineup, building out this roster. Again, still some questions to be answered about it, but the Hornets are definitely improved just on paper going into this year, and having a guy like KJ Simpson, again, not probably going to make an impact on the starting lineup by any means this year, but he is going to be an important piece of the future going forward to keep guys around like that and continue to develop them into NBA players. Now, I mentioned starting lineup there. We're going to talk a little bit about the starters for the Hornets today. We kind of have an idea of who those starting five are going to be. More than likely, we're looking at some variation of LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, whether it be Colin Sexton or Con Knipple. That's still kind of up in the air, but so let's call it Con for right now. LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, and Moussa Diabate. We could also potentially see LaMelo, Colin Sexton, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, and Moose. So it could kind of go either way. So I guess the answer to the question you would see here, who's the most replaceable starter, what's the most up in the air starting position, you'd have to say it would be that two-guard position, right, with Con and Colin Sexton. Well, maybe so. That's kind of one that I think that's an argument that could definitely be made. But I still tend to lean a little more towards that's going to be Colin Sexton, especially on opening night. It could change, but I think Colin Sexton is going to play his way or practice his way into being the Hornets starting two going forward, especially just because Charles Lee is going to want to give Con a chance to just kind of watch, develop, and understand what the NBA is before throwing him out there into the starting lineup right away. Again, could be wrong about that, but I think that the more interesting position that's up for grabs is going to be the power forward position, much like the article that I'm referencing here from Sports Illustrated says. They think, too, Miles Bridges is going to be the most up-in-the-air starter. He's the guy who has the potential to find himself coming off of the bench more so than any other. Now, it's been floated. The criticism about Miles Bridges' game has been talked about here on this show. We know it's been a popular topic of discussion throughout the NBA over the last couple weeks. Bridges being called the most overrated player of the top five of the last 5 years. He's been talked about in a negative light in terms of his scoring efficiency, in terms of his production, what he brings to the table for the Hornets as a whole. It's kind of been a kick Miles while he was down situation the last couple weeks, and this criticism has now made its way into discussing whether or not he'll be a starter for the Hornets going forward. Again, it's been floated several times that Charlotte should even move on from Miles Bridges, especially right now as he's 27, still in the prime of his career. 27 is a little bit older for what the Hornets seem to be wanting to do with their roster as they build out a very young roster. 27 would be one of the older guys on this team. But again, Bridges is still in his prime. It's been floated that the Hornets should try and move on from him, get the best value that they could right now, and that is still a possibility. Certainly something that Charlotte could potentially do. But if not, could Bridges find himself coming off of the bench at some point this season? Now, again, it's not likely that that's going to take place on opening night. We've talked about it. Bridges, he is a 20-point-per-game guy. It's going to be hard to justify not starting him right out of the gate unless something drastic happens in the offseason and training camp as we go into the preseason, and it just doesn't seem like Miles is going to fit. That I don't see really any world in which he's not the starter on opening night, but that could easily change if his production does not increase, if his numbers don't get a little better, if that shooting percentage stays down in the low 30s like it was last year, then I definitely think there is a world in which we could see Miles Bridges coming off the bench, specifically because the Hornets have added more depth, not necessarily at the big man positions at the 4 and the 5. We know there's some questions and some struggles with who's on the roster there, but the Hornets have added some depth, some wing depth, so if they needed to move a guy like Brandon Miller down to that 4 role to start, there's plenty of guys that can come in and play the 3 position, even the 2. If Con drops down to the 3, you could do some things, some plugging and playing there, so there is more depth, which could help the idea of Miles Bridges going to the bench if his numbers are not up to par, are not where Charles Lee and company think they should be. Then that would make it a little bit easier for Miles Bridges to come off the bench. Another thing to keep your eye on is going to be the return of Grant Williams. We talked about that not long ago on the show. We've discussed that and the impact he can have when he comes back. One of the ways he can impact this team is if he comes back healthy, he starts to look good. Maybe he slides into that starting spot at the 4 and let Miles Bridges come off the bench that way. Again, that's not going to be anytime soon, as we know Williams probably won't be here in Charlotte in a uniform until after New Year's, definitely after Christmas. So it won't be a right now fix for Grant Williams, but if he comes back and he looks healthy, he looks kind of like his normal self, he's starting to produce a little better, the team maybe goes a little better with him on the floor, then I think he could be part of the reason you could see Miles Bridges coming off the bench. And again, we could even see Brandon Miller drop down to the 4 and play that position if need be. That could set up for a lineup like Sports Illustrated has floated: LaMelo Ball, Colin Sexton, Con Kneppel, Brandon Miller, and Moussa Diabate. So again, you see that at that one, you see Colin Sexton and Con Kneppel on the floor at the same time. Con dropping down to play that wing spot. Brandon Miller at the 4, Diabate at the 5. So that's just kind of an example of what I was talking about, of other guys who can play on the wing if Miles Bridges needs to go to the bench and someone like Brandon Miller or Grant Williams needs to drop down and play that 4 spot. That is possible. Now, another small lineup for the Hornets there as well. Brandon Miller would be facing a tough task defensively night in and night out guarding a 4. But if it's what the Hornets feel is best and if it's what they have to do to succeed, then they at least have the opportunity there, as they've got some size on the wing to fill that spot for Brandon Miller if he has to drop down to the 4. But I think more than likely it would be a situation where the Hornets would just kind of have to wait it out until a guy like Grant Williams comes back, or even the more realistic possibility of just moving on from Miles Bridges, because there is going to be a team out there, whether it be a contender or just somebody hoping and wishing to get an improved Miles Bridges. There will be a team out there who makes that move and tries to improve, who will be willing to make that move and get a guy like a prime Miles Bridges and return the Hornets with some pieces, whether it be players or future assets. That's still yet to be seen. But if that's the route they go, the Hornets could be in good position there, and again still have a quality starting lineup at that 4 position, despite moving on from or moving Miles Bridges to the bench. This could be a much more impactful and important year than anyone thought for Miles Bridges, as we didn't come into this offseason thinking this could be a prove-it year for Miles, or even a year in which he could be moved to the bench, but that does seem to be the way it is shaping up. So we'll have to keep an eye on that transition and how Miles Bridges develops and moves forward into the 25-26 year. Can he again improve in some of those spots, as he too should benefit from the added pieces around him, free himself up a little bit more offensively. It's just going to be a matter of, can he make his shots and score with a little more efficiency? Can he score with a little more increased shooting percentage? That will be fun to watch as well. Speaking of guys who need to change things about them, who are in the process of trying to shift narratives, we're going to talk about LaMelo Ball here today. I know he's been a major topic of discussion all offseason, and he will only continue to be a talking point going forward no matter what. As long as he's in Charlotte, the Hornets will have something to talk about because of the attention that LaMelo Ball brings, the attraction that just his name carries with it. But the question for today, the question for going forward into this year is, can LaMelo switch the narrative around him? Can he change the thought process about him from being just a guy who jacks up shots from anywhere, loves to take the one-footed running three-pointers, and is just a fun name to watch, a show-off, for lack of a better term, if you will? Can LaMelo change that narrative? Can he be thought of as a serious point guard, a real team leader, a guy going forward? What's he got to do to change that narrative around him? Now, winning is going to be a big part of that. The Hornets have not been winners in a very long time, and you could say the same about their stars, as they can't really be labeled winners in the NBA either, just due to proximity around the Hornets organization. It's been really since Kemba Walker that the last time the Hornets have had a star or a key player that could even make the argument to be called a winner in the NBA. So that is something the Hornets are chasing after from an organizational standpoint, as well as just having a guy on their team who can be thought of as a winner. Now, we all know that LaMelo has the talent and the ability to be a superstar in this league. He's even already kind of approaching that category when healthy and when playing at his best. Anyway, we know that he's got the popularity, he's got the media attention, he's got the persona to be an NBA superstar, but now it's all about continuing to convert his game into superstar levels as well. Now, obviously, health has been a big hindrance in LaMelo's career, as he's yet to play 60 games more than one time in a season. He's only played 107 games in the last 3 seasons, so being on the court has been a big issue for LaMelo. That's something nobody's going to argue with, not going to question. But when he is on the floor, when he is healthy, he has shown that he is more than capable of being that guy on the floor, being the number one option night in and night out, if that is what it takes. LaMelo has shown that he's got the capabilities to do just that, and he's been really doing that since he's gotten to Charlotte. He's been the number one guy. He's had this team kind of on his back, if you will, since he's been here, but now it's going to be time for him to take that next step in terms of leadership, in terms of commanding the team as a point guard. His scoring efficiency has been a big point of contention, a big question as well, much like Miles Bridges. LaMelo has been criticized for shooting too often and taking not some of what are not the best quality shots throughout his career. Again, at times he's been criticized for taking too many wild shots, just shooting too many times in general, but now that necessarily hasn't always been his fault. LaMelo, specifically like last year, has been put in a position where he feels like he has to be the guy, where he feels like he's the only option, where him shooting, no matter how many people are around him, whether it be 4 guys surrounding him or 5 or 2 or 1, it doesn't matter. LaMelo feels like he's still the best option to shoot the ball on the floor, and that has been drastically changed this year, though. Obviously, the additions that we've talked about several times have been brought in. The depth on the team has been improved. There's been more options added for scoring and for shooting, so now LaMelo can feel a little more free, like it doesn't all have to be on him. As I said, a lot of the hero ball that he has been playing up to this point has just been him feeling like he doesn't have a choice, like he is the only option, and that can change pretty heavily this year. Again, Brandon Miller's going to come back. He's going to be healthy. That's another guy that LaMelo has a little bit of familiarity with, so they can mesh a little bit better on the court. Colin Sexton's going to come in. We know he's a career 18-point-per-game guy, so there's a little bit of offensive pressure taking off of LaMelo Ball. Spencer Dinwiddie, a quality shooter. Con Knipple going to come in and free things up for LaMelo. Whether Con's got the ball in his hand, giving it to LaMelo, allowing him to get open, or Con using his elite ability to move without the basketball and find the open lanes, find the open spots where he's supposed to be, allowing for LaMelo to increase his passing efficiency, as well as alter his assist-to-turnover ratio, which has been another knock on him. He turns the ball over quite a bit, but I think with some quality players around him with a little more confidence in who he's passing the ball to, that number will change, as now LaMelo will feel more prone to pass the ball instead of trying to make something crazy happen with a dribble or off the dribble. He can kick the ball out, and there are going to be shooters there standing there who are much more capable of making the shots than they have been, especially last year when the Hornets had an abysmal shooting percentage. The additions there have really made an impact towards increasing that shooting percentage. I wanted to say they've almost already increased it, but we can't quite go that far yet as the season hasn't started. And it would just be going a bit too far to say the Hornets are already an improved shooting team when we still have to see it happen. But you got to think with the guys they've added, with the names that have been brought in on paper, the Hornets are going to be a much improved shooting team. So can LaMelo be more efficient? Can he pass the ball a little better? Can he bring more of his guys in and get them more involved? Can he calm down some of those wild shots? I'm not saying he needs to stop taking all of them, because he does make a lot of those one-footed three-pointers and some of the wild, crazy shots, and that's part of what makes LaMelo. That's part of what adds the interest to his game. But if he can if he can stifle them just a little bit, and if he can not feel like it's necessary to do it all the time, and he can trust the guys around him, they can score, they can make some shots, that'll open up the entire floor for LaMelo, open up the entirety of his game, and maybe be the first step towards him changing this narrative around him in the NBA, maybe be the first step towards him taking the steps to call himself a winner in the NBA. Now, I'm not sure that that's something that can be done in 1 year. I don't think no matter what the Hornets do this season, anything is really going to be changed in full when it comes to talking about LaMelo and the reputation that he has or the titles surrounding him. But I think if he can increase his numbers, his efficiency numbers, if he can change his assist to turnover ratio, get a little bit better on the assist side of things, and just show that he trusts his guys more, and he is becoming more of a true point guard in that regard, then I think this year can go a long way towards starting to change the narrative about LaMelo, towards starting to, for the rest of the NBA to kind of understand what some of us Hornets fans already do about LaMelo, that the ability to be a true point guard, the ability to be a superstar at the same time as being an efficient ball player, they're in there. We've seen those flashes. We've seen those bright spots. It's just a matter of now getting LaMelo the guys around him that can help him do that. And the pressure on him should be greatly reduced this year to score the ball again, with having more shooters, more depth at not just at the guard position behind him, but as well at the wings and things like that. So there's going to be more scores, guys like Brandon Miller fully healthy. That's going to really, really help. The talent around him should allow for him to take more open shots. So instead of the wild running three-pointers that we were talking about, he should have more open shots, just because the defense is going to have to focus on the other guys around him. So again, I don't think this 1 year of quality basketball is going to completely alter the narrative around LaMelo or change everyone's opinion about him, but it can absolutely be a step in the right direction, not just for LaMelo, but for the Hornets organization as a whole, as they continue to try and build and get themselves into a more respectable spot in the NBA, climb out of the basement that is the Eastern Conference. And this year, I think, is going to be the year in which they start to take those first steps, and LaMelo Ball is going to be a key to that. Now, that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on again as we continue to approach the preseason and the regular season. But that is going to do it for today's show, folks. As always, thanks so much for watching along with us out there. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. Leave a like and a comment down in the comment section. Let me know some of your thoughts about today's show, and we'll be ready to do it all over again right here with a brand new episode of Hornets Daily first thing tomorrow.